Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. Hi, everyone. My name is Mathew Jenkinson. I'm one of the principal solutions architects here at PubNub. Just before I get started, I just want to kind of go through a few housekeeping things. The presentation that I'm going to give today has got some levels of audience participation in it. What I would ask, because we've got access to this chat application service on the right-hand side of the screen here, is if you do have a question, either raise your hand or just simply type the question into the box. I would prefer to do questions on the context of the slide that we're talking about. And if I feel that I've got the answer further down the presentation, I'll just simply tell you like, hey, I've got the answer down the line. And if I happen to miss something, we'll go ahead and sweep everything up at the end. So thank you so much. Thank you very much for Agora for having me for today's presentation. I'm truly excited to be able to speak to you about some of the cool stuff that Agora and PubNub are doing together. I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. So for those of you that don't know, so what is PubNub? Well, PubNub is a global network of publish and subscribe servers designed to deliver messages around the world within 250 milliseconds. Messages sent over PubNub can be delivered to millions of subscribers instantaneously, and messages can be modified in flight using tools such as PubNub functions. This allows us to do things like language translation, scanning for profanity and keyword detection, and passing the contents of a message to an external API for business logic. In the same way that you would think about Agora for video messaging, you would think about PubNub for real-time messaging and chat applications. So who am I? Well, my name is Mathew Jenkinson. I'm one of the principal solutions architects here at PubNub. I work with our team of go-to-market teams to make sure that customers and partners get technical help that's needed. Because of the broad spectrum of uses on PubNub, this is sometimes chat applications, sometimes IoT, but I can guarantee almost no two projects are the same, and they're always fun to be a part of. So let's jump into it. What does a good chat application look like? Well, chat applications are really up to you. What do you use chat for? Thinking about your workspace and your workplace, we have a number of chat applications that we use on almost day-to-day basis. You're likely connected to Slack or HipChat, or maybe even Microsoft Teams, or probably even Facebook Workplace. When you think about customer support applications, these can include things like Zendesk Chat, Intercom, Customer, or any of the many people that build custom-made chat applications to support customer support use cases on their platform. But this also extends to things like telemedicine. Patient to nurse and doctor to patient chat applications follow similar design patterns. Okay, just hide that. There we go. Follow similar design patterns here. And I'll talk about that later on down the line. But then you also have people applications, WhatsApp, Viber, Facebook Messenger, the next N+1 chat application that comes along, all feature person-to-person, person-to-group, one-to-many, and many-to-one chat styles. But it's also worth thinking about how chat can enhance apps' abilities to connect people. Photo sharing apps such as Instagram that allow people to not only comment on posts, but can also use chat as a way to keep users engaged and communicating on the platform. PubNub's customers use chat to provide telemedicine servicing, patient to doctor consultation services. We can talk about how we host in-game chat for competitive play. We can connect people together safely for online dating and participate in massive events and virtual conferences. An extension of that is conducting classes for remote learning and remote learning applications. So what does scaling chat look like? Well, designing and scaling a chat application comes down to three core parts: architecture, gathering requirements, what's the purpose of your application, architectural design, how will the app function, what features are you going to make use of, how will people talk to one another, and what can and can they not send to each other? And finally, user experience. What do people use your app to do? What kinds of navigation are you going to be providing, and what platforms are you going to support? So with requirements gathering, it's often an overlooked phase of anyone's chat application project. When thinking about it from an existing app that's having chat added to it, you need to think about the following few things. How will chat add to your application? If you've spent all this time, money, effort, energy, and resources building a great app, you need to make sure that adding chat to your application will further boost the success, not create failure or points of poor experience within your existing app. Next thing you need to think about is, can your existing application infrastructure support the new load of traffic, or would you need to use external resources to manage that connectivity? I'll touch on more of this later on. Finally, how many users are you bringing chat to? If you've got an existing application that's got thousands of users already, Are you going to be drip feeding these users this chat offering, or are you simply going to open the floodgates and let everybody in at the same time? When thinking about integrating chat into a new app, there are some different requirements here. What's the purpose of chat in your application? Is it a primary function of the chat or a secondary feature? Examples here include telemedicine apps that use chat to connect a patient to a doctor versus a gaming app that lets team members chat within an app while playing a game. How and where are you going to host the server components of your app if you're using any at all? If you're designing infrastructure that's supposedly or as close to as serverless as functions as possible, you may not even be wanting to use any server components of your application. And this is where tools like PubNub functions can come in and support you. Finally, what are the forecasted user base over a given time period? If you're launching your new app in a specific market or region, what makes that market the launch market? Joseph, I can see you've got a question about security. What's the question there? I think I can pass you the mic. Let's see how that's done. Joseph, did you want to type your question about security? Okay, we'll come back to that one later on then. So, what does architecture design look like on PubNub? Well, there are two main models used in architecture design. Okay, Joseph, I understood the question. I'll address that actually when we get down to message design. I think that's probably a good one at that point. So let me come back to that one for you, sir. So just to jump back on this slide then, what does architecture design look like? Well, there's two main models of architecture design. We have what's called API first and the direct to PubNub model. And I'll cover those two ones in a little bit. And actually it'll be a great segue for you, Joseph, there as well. As part of your design, you need to think about what features you want your chat to offer. Presence, online and offline state, functions, whether or not you can integrate modify messages in flight, and typing indicators. Is somebody online? Are they actually typing to me right now? On top of that, channel message and user design are all parts of apps that dictate what your users connect to, how they send and receive messages, and what it looks like when they actually receive a message. Let's go ahead and jump into the API first design here. So the first of the major design patterns used to connect to PubNub is called API first design. This is where your API receives all inbound messages. Your app can use things like API keys embedded into HTTP headers for application security, and ultimately it's your app that runs all the business logic on a message. Once your application is happy that a message is valid and able to be sent, it makes the request to PubNub on behalf of the user. You can see here in my design the example flow of all the messages sent out. Let me go ahead and just start drawing on this page here. So all of these here represent devices connected to our chat experience. I have to go back one. And so every time I then send a message, I'm sending the message directly to your server. We use whatever your application authority does to receive the message, process it, and any of the additional functions such as language translation, profanity scanning, so on and so forth are all handled by your server here. When your server is done actually processing the message and is ready to deliver it, it hands it to PubNub and we do the last mile portion here. So this then comes as a read-only service. Everybody connects directly to here via the subscribe, and we hand messages back to the platform, and then that's presented to the UI. When the next person wants to send a message, we go back to the beginning of our loop here, and we go back around again. The second design pattern is a direct to PubNub pattern. This is where all users are directly connected to PubNub for sending and receiving messages. Your app is responsible for issuing security tokens to PubNub, and we manage moving those messages around. This type of setup is very typical when you've got existing monolithic applications and monolithic architectures that might not be able to handle all the inbound requests that chat can generate, or it's simply too difficult to upgrade that existing infrastructure. This setup allows you to make use of things like PubNub functions to modify and augment the messages as it flows through the PubNub network. Jumping back here to my pointer pen here, I can come along here, and every time I want to send a message, I send it directly to PubNub. PubNub then can implement a message function. So if I was doing anything like language translation, profanity scanning, so on and so forth, it would happen here inside the PubNub function and integrations layer. We would also then potentially hand a copy to your application server, and then we would deliver the message on. Joseph, actually, this is a great point here. I can talk to you about message security. So on top of everything here, your server here is actually responsible for the message, not only the message security, but also the application security. I can take this mobile app here that might be Mathew and say only Mathew can connect to a specific channel. I could also take another message and say, hey, this is Rebecca's web app. And I can say Rebecca's web app can access channels A, B, and C. I'll touch on message channels in a minute, but I'm just kind of queuing that one up for you there. So what kind of features should my chat application have? Features can range from typing indicators to content scanning and even reaching out to external APIs for additional resources. Content scanning typically includes profanity and scanning text for keywords. And common use cases here are both for cyberbullying for teen and young adult apps, but also for customer service-based apps, where real-time keyword analysis means the manager could get a heads up when a customer is having a bad experience. And if this is the case, they could jump into the chat and help guide the conversation. External APIs are used for things like language translation that I've touched on a couple of times, as well as external data logging and interacting with chatbots. And finally, file uploads lets you upload images, documents, and anything you need to share with other members of your chat team. We're seeing the mass adoption of file uploads used by medical teams that can upload x-rays, bring in consultants to discuss use cases, and share results with patients, all from within a single chat room. So what does channel design look like on PubNub? Well, channels on PubNub are just string identifiers. This means that you can name and define your channels using any setup you like. I can randomly generate IDs for everything, storing the channel data either in an API or using PubNub's object endpoint to hold the details of the channel. But I can also use string names that are meaningful, such as main chat, RTE2020, or the London office. It's important to understand that you don't create or destroy channels on PubNub. Think of it like a radio frequency. I don't create a radio frequency, I just tune my radio to that frequency to broadcast to and to listen from. And this means that all of these channel names are valid. Additionally, PubNub supports channel wildcarding using the dot notation. You can see in some of my examples, I've used user.someone and group.something. And it means that I can build apps that listen for any of the children of my channels listed as the dot or the group dot notation. Well, why is this helpful? Well, it means that I can use PubNub functions to listen to entire blocks of channels without having to describe to each one. For example, if I was using a PubNub function for language translation and I wanted to apply that function to group-based channels, all I need to do is apply that function to the group.wildcard channel system. So what does message design look like? Well, all messages on PubNub are essentially JSON payloads. It means that they can be as simple or as complex as you need them to be. When I build chat apps, I always try to define what types of messages I'm going to send. Text, images, and URLs can all become definable types in my apps. And here's a few examples of those messaging types. Defining message types means that it's easier for UIs to present things. It means that we can expand the capabilities of a messaging app later on without having to rebuild or refactor old parts of the project. I can, for instance, add a PDF type to this messaging app without having to disturb the text, image, and URL types that already exist in my world. Joseph, this is the second part of application security here. Not only can we make the actual connecting to a channel secure by using what we call channel authority tokens, but I can also take each one of these JSON payloads and encrypt it using a secret cipher key that only you guys hold. So when your application loads, you can pass a cipher key into the local client, and then every message that's actually sent over PubNub is signed at the client layer using a cipher key, pushed over PubNub in an encrypted format, and only decipherable by people that have the same key there. Let me know if that answers your question, and if not, I'll happily dive in deeper. So how do I actually scale? Well, once you've built it yourself, if you followed up to this point, you can see there's actually a lot of work to do to get started on chat. If you were scaling this on your own setup, you'd have to factor in virtual machines, load balancers, and shared databases that your app would have to consume. Not only that, but you have to then host and support that, including adding on-call engineers into the mix to managing failure points. And quite honestly, this is in itself a whole nother presentation and one that I'll save for another time. But this is where PubNub can come in. Using PubNub as the messaging layer means you can build scalability into your app from the first line of code. It doesn't matter if you're building an app that links a couple of internal banking teams to customers or an entire set of doctors to their patients available across the nation. PubNub can scale to you. To date, we've scaled to over 20 million concurrent users in a channel. So I feel confident we could help you build an app of your dreams here. I'm going to go ahead and jump into a demo. So I'm just going to come out of the screen share and then I'll drop a link in and you'll all see a real demo experience that I've got. So Let me go ahead and grab it here. So I'm just grabbing this URL, and then you'll all be able to jump into my demo chat environment here. Oh, actually, I need to ignore the first one. Sign up. Jump into the second one. Apologies there, everybody. Jump into the second one for me. So let me come out of here. So if you, for those of you guys, you should just be able to create a new account. Please just use any email address you want. I'm really not capturing anybody's. It's just for the posterity of welcome to a chat application, sign up for a username and an email address. I'm not capturing anything. And if you want to see afterwards, I'll show you that the entire database has been deleted. So if I do not Matt and then my password. So you can see in here that I've got this chat room that I'm currently running, and right now you can see it's on my chat on my laptop. One of the cool features that I can do on PubNub is a feature we call presence, and I'm going to call that right now to see how many people are in the chat room. I've got EMG, Rebecca, and Sarab. Nice to meet you guys. Thanks so much. And let me go ahead and do some more bits here. One of the things that I can also do is turn on channels. So right now you can see that I've only got 3 channels available. Let me go ahead and add an additional channel to this example here. So that one. No, wrong database. Channels, there we go. Let's make this one public. So simply by updating something in my database and then running a new API call, you can see that I've added RTE2020 to my channel room. There we go. So for those of you that didn't see what I did there, if you go ahead and just click on chats in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that it comes up with available channels. You can jump into any one of these and then call users and you can see who's online. But right now I'm just going to jump back into the main channel. Hi, everyone. Thanks for playing. And if I could type well, that would be really, really good today. But rather than breaking down everything here, let me go ahead and show you what's happening under the hood. Joseph, earlier on that I mentioned that everything in my world is a JSON payload. And if I were to talk about an encrypted message here, I would say, I'll do that in a minute. I would say, here's the message payload as it came in from PubNub. So you can see here that we came into the main channel. I signed it with a message certificate. It came from PubNub, and I know exactly what type of message it is and thus how to handle it. If I were then to take a picture, so let me go ahead and try and do a screen picture at the same time. There we go. Hi, everybody. You can see that I took a picture and then I added it to my thing. So if this were a telemedicine app, for example, I could have uploaded any of my x-rays and brought in Dr. Rebecca to consult on it, and then brought in the patient to say, hey, hey, patient EMG, here's the specialist, and they provided this kind of information and what's going on with it. So you can then allow the person to communicate directly inside it. And you should all then be able to see the actual image by clicking on it and just loading it up and stuff. One of the other things as well that I added here particularly is chat with Agora. So directly integrated into the chat application is the video options. So you guys should be able to jump in, and you can see here that I'm using Agora's service. Hopefully I won't get any feedback. I'm just going to put this on mute. And if anybody is able to join the video chat, I'll give you a good wave out. But I'm assuming not. Either way, you should be able to see me in the bottom corner. Oh, we got someone join. It's taking a minute. This is probably because I'm running a demo environment on my laptop while also doing a screen presentation at the same time. So there we go. Whoever it is that is not quite loaded. Oh, there we go. Hi. Thanks for playing today. Okay, I'm going to cut you off there. Alrighty. So I'm just going to jump back to the presentation. That was the end of my presentation here. So did I miss any questions in the chat channel, or did any of the portions of the presentation generate any questions from anybody? I'm assuming not, because the chat room is quite quiet. Let me just check my chat application. Nope, it looks like there are no questions there. Okay, right, so I'm going to draw a conclusion to today's presentation there. If you do have any follow-up, please let me know. My email address is provided in the link. I'm happy to field any questions you guys might have. So thank you very much.